We are continuing our study in Ein Yacov. We're on page 60 of Ein Yacov, and we're looking at the Berachot 63a. We don't compete with scholars. Don't compete with scholars. We have learned in the Baraita, Hillel, an elder, said, at a time when scholars are not teaching Torah to the people, you should disseminate Torah. When scholars disseminate Torah, you should modestly stay in the background so as not to compete with them. If you see a generation that has a love of Torah, spread Torah knowledge. As it says, one man gives generously and ends with more. Proverbs 11 verse 24. But if you see a generation that has no love for Torah, then keep the Torah to yourself. As it says, it's a time to act for God. For they have violated your Torah. Psalms 119 verse 126. Forcing Torah on people who have no understanding for it will only lead to degradation of the Torah. Bar Kapara expounded, when goods are cheap, that's the time to buy, for the price will surely go up, according to Rashi. And in a place where it says there's no one to do the job, you be the one. Abaya said, we can infer from this that when there's someone to do the job, an example, when there's a Torah scholar who teaches Torah, then you should not compete. The Gemara asks the obvious. Well, we all know the rule that you are not allowed to render halakhic decision in the presence of your rabbi. This is what Rashi is mentioning. The Gemara answers, Abaya has in mind in the case where the Torah scholar is not your rabbi, and he is your equal in learning. Nevertheless, you should not expound Torah in his town. Rabbi Kapara expounded, where in the Tanakh do you find a section that contains all the basic elements of the Torah? The verse states, in all your ways acknowledge him, and he will make your path smooth or straight. Proverbs 3:6. That's one Proverbs that I taught my kids to memorize. The verse means that if you are constantly aware of the presence of God, then your most mundane act, like eating or sleeping, becomes a mitzvah. Rava said, even when committing a transgression, a person should always consider whether the transgression is done for the sake of heaven, as Elijah did when he transgressed by offering sacrifice on Mount Carmel. He did so in order to prove that the false prophets of Baal and their followers that God is truly the one and only creator. Thus his transgression was really a mitzvah. Bar Kapara further expounded that a person should teach his son a trade that is clean and easy. Now there's this idea that you'll find in many, unfortunately, Latin American country, that you have to sweat it out, carpentry. And it's a great trade, by the way, and it can be made a lot of money. But the idea of an office job or a job of intellect is completely dismissed by many of the working class people and should not be so. This is why we find a person should teach a son a trade that is clean and easy. For example, even needle stitching, tailoring. It was taught in the Baraita, Rabbi says, a person should not invite too many friends to his house. As it says, a person's many friends are hurtful to him. Proverbs 18 verse 24. It was also taught in the Baraita that the Rebbe says a person should not appoint a manager over his household because there are women around. For if Potiphar had not appointed Joseph as manager over his household, he would not have landed in all the troubles that he landed in. And we know what happened with that. As a matter of fact, this morning I was talking about that, about Proverbs, where basically spreading lashon hara and envying can cause a lot of trouble, including landing yourself into the wrong situation of being falsely accused when you did nothing wrong. And apparently this is something that I myself take to heart. And it's interesting that when we read that Elijah sacrificed in Mount Carmel, he was supposed to do so in Jerusalem. The only place they were allowed to sacrifice was at the place where Hashem said, it's here. But Elijah transgressed in order to prove that to the Jewish people that God is the only God. There is no other God, only God. So we're not to compete with Torah scholars unless the situation, as we mentioned here in Berachot, comes to fruition. In our next video, we're going to be talking about the ordeal of the Sota. So we'll take a look at that in our next video. Shalom, shalom.